We're live.
We're live. All right. Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the big thank you search of 2020. My name is T. Fugner. I'm the editorial director for comics at King Features Syndicate, and I'll be moderating today. I'd love to introduce our panelists. So, unfortunately, Lalo Alcaraz had to drop out. He had a scheduling conflict with his daughter's graduation. So, congratulations to your daughter, Lalo. We have Rick Kirkman of Baby Blues, and Rick is really the person who spearheaded this project. We've got Jason Chatfield, who is the president of the National Cartoonist Society and the
Hello.
cartoon on Ginger Megs. We have Greg and Karen Evans, who are the co-creators of Luann. And we have Hilary Price from Rhymes with Orange. And as I said, I'm T. Fugner. I'm the editorial director for comics at King Features Syndicate. You can see this live on the Comics Kingdom. And you'll be able to see this later on the Comics Kingdom website and on Comics Kingdom YouTube channel. So if you miss any part of this, you can go back and find it there later. So, I'd love to start, Rick. You're the one who really came up with this idea, and I'd love if you could describe what the thank you search is for everyone who's listening right now.
Sure. Well, originally, my idea was just to do something kind of goofy as a distraction for the cartoonists and our readers. And after talking with some of the cartoonists, it became clear that it was better if it was associated with the elephant in the room, which was the pandemic. So rather than trying to come up with something where somebody just put a big thank you panel in one of their cartoons or anything, I thought it would be great to sort of combine that distraction for the readers with the cause of thanking all of these workers. And so I came up with this idea for embedding symbols that would represent all of these people that we owe gratitude for getting us through this pandemic into the comics. And so I tried out the idea with a few friends, and they liked it. And so I don't really have an extensive email list of cartoonists, so I went straight to Jason at the National Cartoonist Society, and they have a giant mailing list, and they can get the word out really quickly. But the thing was, I was feeling very helpless during the pandemic because all of the doctors and the nurses were saying, the best thing that you can do is stay home, help us out by staying home. Don't catch this because it's overwhelming us. And it seemed like such an imbalance of sacrifice, to stay home. And like the nurses and doctors, they were, faced with horrifying things to see. And, they didn't sign up for some of this stuff, for instance, like being surrogates for families because the families couldn't be with their loved ones, in their last moments. And that was just really, that really struck home with me. And I don't know, I mean, you can't go around, paying all of these people individually their hazard pay. You can't erase the things that they've seen. You can't erase the fear that they've had of exposure. These are things that those people are going to be stuck with for a long time, maybe forever. The least we can do is, find a way to thank them. And everybody's finding their own ways. I mean, from the big applauding, at 7 p.m. every night in some of the cities, and lots of other ways to show gratitude. And this just seemed like an appropriate way, maybe, for us to do it because, we just sit around and draw all the time. So.
Thanks, Rick. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what the thank you search is. So for folks who
Okay.
what exactly, what are they looking for? They're opening their papers today. They're seeing something.
Right. So the idea was each cartoonist was supposed to embed these symbols into their artwork. And I didn't have uh, any suggestions about how to do it. They could do it all any way they wanted. I mean, the symbols are masks for the healthcare workers and first responders, a microscope for researchers, a steering wheel for all the people that did deliveries and truckers and transportation workers. Um, there was the apple for teachers. And this is like this trying to remember the seven dwarves names. I think I left one out.
I'll just share.
Pardon?
I can share them real quick and everybody can see them.
Anyway, so the instruction was basically, oh yes, the fork for farmers and restaurants and other businesses that stayed open. Anyway, the idea was to hide these. Maybe you could hide them. You could use them in your gag. You could use them as props. You could just stick them in your gag somehow without any logic. I didn't really care as long as they were in there. And I did make the mistake of, I think, of saying you can be as devious as you want to hide these symbols in your artwork. And I'll tell you, I've wasted a lot of time this morning trying to find some of these.
Yeah, so let's look at everybody's cartoons. We'll start with yours, Rick. So here's the baby blues for today. And let's see, I can see the shopping cart because we've got
right.
one holding it. But yeah, there's the mask. The mask is pretty big, but
right.
it's, there's, the other ones are a little harder, but it's really cool. So yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about how this came about?
Sure. One of the things about this that was challenging was the fact that, we work pretty far ahead on deadlines. And we were supposed to have our national convention of cartoonists this weekend. And today would have been the day that we were all saying goodbye to everybody and everything. And so I thought an appropriate date to pick for this would be today, since we weren't going to have our communal experience with cartoonists this weekend. And unfortunately, it was only about 2 or 3 weeks away when I came up with this. So everybody had to really scramble. And I really am impressed and surprised and thankful that so many people, made all sorts of changes to their schedules and everything to get these things done. And the syndicates were great about, making sure that, deadlines were still met at this late date. And anyway, in our case, we had a different strips that I was about to draw for this date. And it didn't really lend itself to this. And so it turned out that the gag that we had after that was the one that really lent itself to this. So we just swapped out gags, and I drew this one and put in the different elements in the photos of the kids. And so far, it seems like universally the one that people seem to have trouble with is the fork. But I'm not going to tell you where it is.
Folks watching at home, if you can comment in the comment section when you see the fork, where it is, but just let us
right there. I'm pointing to it.
All right. So thank you, Rick. And I think this has been it's been an amazing project. We had over 70 syndicated cartoonists, and then a bunch of cartoonists who aren't syndicated participated, and folks have been posting things all day.
Oh yeah. I just want to say that I am so pleased and impressed that there are so many cartoonists online. Many of them I've never even seen their work or I didn't even know that they were posting cartoons online. I've seen some of them today that are extremely clever. And I'm just very happy to see that kind of response from online cartoonists.
So I think a big part of that is thanks to the National Cartoonist Society. And we're going to go over to Jason Chatfield, who is the president of the National Cartoonist Society and also the cartoonist on Ginger Megs. So Jason, we've got your strip up, and I'd love for you to talk a little about how the National Cartoonist Society got involved, and then, you know, if you want to talk a little bit about your strip idea. And I think particularly you being the one person here who is working on you're working on a very long time legacy strip, and you know, what is it like to participate in something like this when, you know, when you're working within a world that was handed down to you and that you're the steward for?
Yeah, it's well, there's three parts there. Okay, so the first I will mention that, first of all, full credit to Rick on the idea. As soon as he told me, I put down the phone and immediately contacted all the NCS cartoonists. I got an email sent out that within a few hours to everybody. He mentioned that he had been chatting with like Jeff Keane and Jerry Scott, Stephen Pastas, Hilary Price here, Dave Coverley, Bill Hines. And this is something that they all felt like they really wanted to figure out something, how to do this, you know. And when you hear names like that, as far as I'm concerned, like that's like, you know, that's a call to arms as far as it goes. The NCS, we are lucky to have in our ranks the most talented cartoonists in the world. So this is just the kind of project that we love to sink our teeth into. We really want to get across the idea that since we weren't having the Rubens this weekend, and I will go into what the Rubens is for anyone who's unaware. Since we weren't having the Rubens this weekend, this is a really nice way for us all to do something together, albeit virtually and in print and online. But it's just the kind of thing that we often really like to do because, I mean, 7 o'clock every night here in New York, you know, all of my neighbors and myself and everyone here, we're hanging out the window clapping and cheering and whistling and banging pots and pans, you know, to thank all the frontline first responders and medical personnel and everybody. I mean, the entire list of people that we've tried to sort of include in the 6 icons. And it always feels, you know, you get kind of a sense, kind of, it makes your skin, gives you goosebumps. And you always feel like you want to amplify that message of thanks, because as Rick earlier mentioned, there is so much more that they're having to go through than what they signed up for as medical professionals, and first responders and restaurant personnel, everybody who we're thanking. So to that end, we're really grateful to Rick for sharing the idea, and we're very happy to have gotten everyone involved. And we didn't just put the word out to NCS members strictly. We just said all cartoonists, any cartoonists, you know, book illustrators, animators, online cartoonists, you know, if you've got an Instagram, do something on Instagram. If you've got a following on Twitter or a webcomic or a blog or a Facebook, whatever you do in comics, like this wasn't restricted just to the membership of the NCS. And that was really important, because anyone who expresses themselves through the art of comics and cartoons, I think it's important that everyone feels like they can get involved and sort of spread that message. The Rubens weekend is a really big, it's a monumental sort of annual event that the National Cartoonist Society hold every year for the last 74 years. This is the first year we've had to cancel on account of the coronavirus. We were going to be in Kansas City this weekend. So yeah, it was a big disappointment to have to cancel that. All of the cartoonists come together for one giant weekend. We do drawing for kids at hospitals. We do a conference with presentations by cartoonists. and we have a big awards night. We hand out awards for all the different categories of cartooning, and we all get to see each other. We all get to, you know, creep out of our studios and actually wear pants, and say hello and catch up with what very quickly becomes a family. You know, the cartooning community is very, you know, it's a competitive industry, but we're not competitive with each other. We're very, you know, collegiate and friendly, and it's very much like a big family, which I think is why ideas like this catch on so quickly within the community. We all agree that this is a really great thing to do, and we can have some creative fun with it. With my strip here, this was similar to Rick. I had already done this strip, and it was due to run, I think, last weekend. So I quickly did another one, and I switched them out, and I added in the symbols in there. This is Ginger Megs is a legacy strip. It's turning 100 next year. I'm the fifth cartoonist in 99 years to take it over. It's interesting to kind of, I love just sinking my teeth into drawing and drawing and drawing. Like as much as some of the newspapers kind of shrink comics down, with the Sundays you have a bit more space to play with, and I really, really relish the opportunity to just put in little hidden details and things that people can kind of get involved in. My wife and I this morning were kind of sitting, and I was kind of asking her to find the symbols, and it took her a while, and I was like, well, that's a good sign, you know, she couldn't find the fork. And the readers as well. The readers, I always post everything online after it's gone to print, and all of the readers have been giving me great feedback on what they can and can't find. Ginger has a perpetually messy room, so this was an easy fit to kind of throw in on top of the usual, you know, cricket bats and, you know, dirty socks and things. I threw in all of the symbols, and obviously the shocked look on his mother's face is nothing that terribly new. But yeah, it's a challenge. The reason it's a challenge to work within the confines of a legacy strip is, and I do like working within confines, creatively speaking. You have to use the world, the cartoon world that has been created. It still has to be contemporized to a level that can still be relatable to the readers without sort of dishonoring the history of the strip and the original creator's intentions. I'm very lucky that the creator's granddaughter, who is still in charge of the strip as far as IP and things like that, she's very happy for us to explore ways to keep it relevant and current. And when we have projects like this, it's really exciting because we sort of get to play around a little bit and not just share the 6 icons, but also throw in other little red herrings that people are like, wait, is that? No, that looks like a paper towel tube with eyes glued onto it. Like, it's all these extra little things that readers pick up on and engage with. And as I said, we've got 99 years worth of readers over, you know, several generations who all are very vocal and they comment and every day, and they email, and it's great. They write letters to newspapers. So yeah, so this was a really fun project, and I give full credit to Rick for the idea, and we're very happy to be involved.
Thank you so much, Jason, for all of your help out with the outreach for this. I think that the NCS did such a phenomenal job of bringing in folks and really making this into such a big project that, you know, so many readers can enjoy and so many people will be able to see the gratitude in. So thank you. The next cartoon we have is Luann by Greg and Karen Evans, and Greg and Karen are both with us to talk about Luann. Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Karen. So again, you know, I'd love to hear a little bit about what went into the strip for you and why it was important for you to take part in this project.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for involving us. And Rick, when Rick called me about this, we talked on the phone, he explained the idea, and then I saw more from Jason. And, you know, all I could think is, why didn't I think of this brilliant idea? This is great.
I thought you were going to say, well, that's too much work.
I said that second. The second. But I kind of like Jason, I had already done a Sunday because I also have the messy room trope in my strip. And so I was able to add in the things that we need. And just as a side thing to other cartoonists and those of you out there, is it just me, or is it really hard to draw a shopping cart? I just
Yes.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
It's so hard. Anyway, so yeah, I just sprinkled some things around in Luann's messy room, and just for fun, I added a hidden bed. I don't know if you can see her bed, but it's hidden beneath a pile of stuff. Because, you know, all of us are so fortunate. I mean, I feel privileged to be able to have this platform and this billboard to be able to say thank you and to express our appreciation to people who go out and literally risk their lives to save people, to help keep things running and rolling along. You know, all I do is, I'm just a lazy old guy that sits around drawing cartoons. So I really appreciate the people who are really doing these important things. You know, I get my groceries delivered now instead of going to the store. So here's somebody that, you know, goes to the effort and the danger of getting out and going out and bringing me my groceries. One of them is my daughter, who brings me my weekly cantaloupe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds silly, but this one has a cantaloupe habit. Mm-hmm. But so I am helping, but I really don't take any credit. And I think we've both talked about this. You know, a lot of folks, when we were asked to stay home, everyone was checking in, how are you handling it? And we thought we're really rather spoiled because many cartoonists, we already sort of shelter in place for a living. And watching everyone else who had to make really dramatic shifts in their lifestyles, and sharing that sense for those of us who are able to stay home. A lot of times when there's a crisis, it's a call to action. You know, you're able to get involved in some way to help out. And the coronavirus is not that. To Rick's point, for the majority of us, we were asked the best thing you can do is to not do things. Please don't go out and limit your interactions. So for us to be able to do that and stay safe and keep others safe relies on these individuals who are still helping us get our food and transporting our supplies and taking care to educate our children as best they're able through computers nowadays, and the folks who are out there on the healthcare front lines. It's just a phenomenal effort by folks who are help us stay home. And I think this is such a fun, and I know it feels kind of like a small token when we were talking about putting these into the strip, like, okay, well, here's our little gesture, but seeing it out there as a community from all the cartoonists and seeing a way to show some thanks is, we hope, is meaningful. And we have a big fan base, and it's been fun to see them responding and expressing their own stories or their own piece of gratitude. So that's a key moment in time to be able to say thank you to all those who've been out there on our behalves.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, thank you to both of you. And, you know, of course, thank you to all the folks who are helping. And last but not least, we have Hilary Price from Rhymes with Orange. Here's Hilary's strip, and which I just love too how all of these strips deal with COVID and deal with staying in some way. That's not true for all the strips if you go look at them, but they're all dealing with, you know, people at different stages in life. So we looked at small children, we looked at teenagers, and now we have two little old ladies. And Hilary, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the strip, and again, you know, about why this project was important for you to participate in.
Thanks, T, and thank you, Rick, for giving me a call, because it is, you never hear the words as a cartoonist that there's an emergency. Is there a cartoonist in the house? And so the idea that we could have agency and help somehow was a complete gift. But I thought in talking about this cartoon, what I wanted to talk about was my process in terms of how I think about this strip and about this effort, and how it's changed over the course of time, and then share the connections I've more recently made about racial injustice. In my immediate circle, I think I'll start personally and then go zoom out from there. But in my immediate circle, my sister is an ER physician's assistant. And in the very beginning of this crisis, she works at a private hospital where it is funded in Denver. And she was sending out a GoFundMe page so that emergency room personnel could get personal protective equipment. And I'm thinking, this hospital has means, and still individual people, because someone had a connection to some cache of PPE somewhere, that individuals were funding this medical effort for their safety. And it was at the beginning, it was a very, very scary time. And one thing that Jessica said to me was, well, be sure to say that you're donating on behalf of me so that I can get a piece of equipment. And that was so frightening on this like personal level about my sister's safety. But then the flip side of that there were some people whose families and friends wouldn't have the means to donate. And how would that work out? And I think it was funded, and so everybody who got it got what they needed. But it speaks to how some people have more access to things than other people. My partner, is a teacher. And so it's been interesting to watch her get up every day and teach a class without that connection that you need to teach students. So that's kind of my sister's my biological family, and now we'll go to what's called like my logical family, which is friends and my partner. And I have a very, very close friend who is a end-of-life palliative care nurse in New York City at Mount Sinai Hospital. And she would send out notices from the front lines. And for her, there's the personal experience, which is still there, of while she's on her shift, she's in full-on gear. So you can't pee, you can't drink because you don't want to pee, because you can't take everything off and put everything on easily. And it's difficult for her to see her family because she does not want to put them in harm's way. In her end of life unit, there's maybe one clap for people that are leaving the unit for every 100 who are not. And the people that end up in her unit are disproportionately people of color. And so one of the things that I realized from reading some of the articles was that the frontline people that are working at Amazon, or delivering, or working in kitchens, or nurses, are disproportionately, not disproportionately, largely people of color. And so there was this idea that at one point, when you're serving, you're a hero. But with the things that have gone on with George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, when you leave your job, you're not safe to walk the streets anymore. And so I was thinking about the ways that racism is baked into our country, and how you really don't have to look farther than the comics page itself. When we look about representation on the comics page, there are very, very few people of color's voices as artists on the comics page. There are very few women. As we look at our comics page, it's probably on our page, we could say maybe 20-1, 20-2. So when I think about ways that I'm trying to be more aware of how disparity is baked in, I don't actually have to look any farther than my own profession. And that's nothing to do with the wonderful people that I'm sharing this panel with, and all the amazing humans that are in the National Cartoonist Society and Cartoonist Wide. You couldn't ask for a more generous and giving group of people. But I think that as a newspaper, we can start with a newspaper in terms of whose stories are getting told. So that's my trajectory around this big thank you search of 2020.
Thank you, Hilary. I think what you're saying is extremely meaningful. Is definitely something that I was thinking about preparing for this. And I think it's something that we're all thinking about. You know, the fact that we are spending all of this time thanking people who are now you know, being stopped on the street and being told that they're out past curfew because they had to stay to end their hospital shift is, you know, it is a real problem, because, you know, they're doing such amazing work, and then to leave that amazing work they're doing and then be told that they're somehow acting in a criminal way because they're just trying to get home from their jobs is, you know, is something that we really need to be addressing, because these people are the reason that we've all been able to stay home and that we've all been able to keep ourselves safe. So I think it's a perfect segue into, you know, talking about how we can actively help right now. A few of you folks suggested some charities that you feel are really important. We've got Feeding America, which is at feedingamerica.org, and I believe Hilary and Rick, you both recommended giving to them. So if one of you would like to talk a little bit about Feeding America, that would be great.
Take it away, Rick.
Hilary. Oh, I was just going to say, take it away,
first.
Hilary. The reason we picked feedingamerica.org is just because, you know, they help out a lot with local food banks, and that seems where a lot of I mean, that's really where people need it the most, is on a local level. And if you've seen some of the videos of people lining up, you know, for hours, people who are unemployed, you know, just lining up and waiting to get, you know, a box full of food. I mean, that's, you know, they really need those resources. And so I think that's a fantastic one. Another one that we did put in was directrelief.org, which also is more of a direct sort of charity, because they help out with healthcare workers and providing PPEs and things like that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rick. And then Jason, you suggested Humanity Inclusion. Would you like to say a few words about them?
Yeah, absolutely. Humanity and Inclusion have a help protect people with disabilities from COVID-19. If you think it's difficult to protect yourself in New York, you can imagine what it's like in Myanmar or in very poor third world places, excuse me, that have experienced natural disasters, as well as very, very low socioeconomic areas. So $45 can, excuse me, can teach 10 people how to protect themselves and their families. $75 allows for the purchase of 140 masks in distribution in refugee camps. And $120 provides hygiene kits to 4 families in need. There are entire families in refugee camps around the world, as well as in tiny little villages that don't even understand. They don't have access to the information that we do. And it's really, really important that charities like this, organizations like this is actually a 38-year-old international charity that's done incredible work on a lot of things around the world. And I've donated to them a lot because I see a lot of the money just going directly and impacting directly on people, similar with Direct Relief, actually. So I highly recommend it. Yeah, Humanity and Inclusion. They have their COVID-19 emergency fund, and the link will be available.
Thank you. And then you can also find a really big list of all of the other charities that our cartoonists are giving to themselves or asking for you to give. If you go to either comicskingdom.com or gocomics.com, you'll find all of the participating cartoonists and their links to their preferred charities. So you can look at those and see which ones really mean something to you. Presentation. We do have a few more minutes. I'm going to stop the share now, and and I'm looking to see if there are any questions. The only question I'm seeing is a question for Rick, asking if you are intending to deal with COVID in your comic.
Oh, was that for me?
Yes.
Sorry, it cut out a little bit. Yes, we are, but it's it's not very overt. I mean, we have some strips coming up where there's a little bit of dealing with it, but mostly it's sort of in the background because our family or our strip tends to focus really on the home life of the family, and since they're really not going out or anything, and we've had to kind of slowly make this adjustment because we had strips already planned and drawn, but there are certain things. You can see like Daryl's coming home from the grocery store and he's taking his mask off or something like that. Things like that, or they have a repairman coming to do something and he's got a mask on, or they're talking about why they can't go on vacation because they need to stay home, things like that. But there's not a lot of really direct dealing with the pandemic, and we have actually heard from a lot of readers saying, I hope you don't get too far into this because we hear this all the time on the news. Practically everywhere you look, it's all about the pandemic. And, sometimes we just want to look at the comics and get a laugh. So we're not being, like I said, very overt about it, but it definitely is in the background.
Thanks, Rick. I have one other question for Jason.
Mm-hmm.
I hope this is okay for me to mention, but we have a question asking how you and your wife are doing recovering from COVID. So.
Sure. Yeah. Well, we did get it. My wife and I did get COVID-19 in March and throughout April. It was a very difficult process. It's important that people know it's not a hoax and it's not just a thing. It's not just like the flu. It's not just a thing you get to have it to get antibodies. It's quite a serious thing. We're doing fine. That there's this sort of prolonged COVID hangover thing where your energy just dips and you get very lethargic. So we were timing our work and deadlines around our energy levels for a while there. But we're doing much better now. I did document the process of getting the virus at my website, jasonchatfield.com/coronavirus, if anyone's interested. Or if anyone is having any sort of symptoms and is wondering if it is COVID or if it's something else and what to expect or prepare for. It's obviously very important to me that a lot of people know the information about this virus and the seriousness of it. There are a lot of people in my social media still sharing things about it being not so serious and being a hoax and only affecting older people. That's not at all true. And thank you for the question, whomever asked that. But we're doing fine now. Thank you.
And by the way, that diary of Jason's is just, not only is it extremely funny, it's harrowing too. It's just,
yeah.
I really recommend people see that because it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So yeah, so we are just about out of time, but I wanted to ask Hilary or Greg or Karen if you have anything, anything else that you'd like to talk about, if you've got, specific stories of things that have happened over the past couple months that, that you highlight folks who've really gone out of their way to help during this crisis, or anything, or even funny anecdotes. I think, everybody can kind of use a little bit of a laugh about this occasionally, which, we're all cartoonists. So if there's anything else that either any of you would like to add, I'd love to hear a little bit more from you, since we had questions for Rick and Jason.
I think mostly, honestly, this is a chance just to thank others and give them a space to be acknowledged and appreciated. And we're very grateful to the platform and the National Cartoonist Society for the opportunity, and Rick for the idea, and to our fans and readers for their support through this time. That's, I think, where we're at. It's just a very heartfelt day.
Thank you.
I have a thing where I was thinking about how I was like this with my phone, and I had my mask here and I was like, oh, now I can't find my glasses, my phone, or my mask, because I was wearing them all.
And can I just say one last thing? That none of this ever would have gotten off the ground if it hadn't been for the cartoonists who decided to take a chance and do this. I mean, I have no idea what to expect today, and I'm just so pleased that so many people did this. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you to everybody. Thank you to Rick. Thank you to Jason. Thank you to all of the editors at the syndicates who helped put this together, get the word out. And of course, I think most importantly, thank you to all of the frontline workers who've been there for us during this time. The folks in the hospitals, to the people who are putting our things in boxes and getting them out the door to us. You're all so important. And, and we so appreciate all the hard work you're doing. So thank you, everybody, for joining me today. As I mentioned, you will be able to find this on comicskingdom.com and on the Comics Kingdom YouTube channel after it's done, if you want to share it with anyone. And everybody in this, if you can rewind back to the beginning to find everyone's social media accounts and the names of their cartoons if you're not familiar with them already, because you absolutely should be. Thank you, everyone. Again, have a wonderful day. Stay safe, everyone, and do take care. All right.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Steve.